Well, now the world reacted in horror to yesterday's massacre, but amongst the horror came a mood of defiance, and many fellow satirists and cartoonists have given their own unique take on the attacks. The cartoonists say they're standing behind the right to free expression, but could they also be accused of defending the right simply to be offensive? In this case, to millions of people who share a religious conviction that prohibits any image of the Prophet Muhammad. Joining me now from Stockholm is the Swedish artist and cartoonist Lars Vilks. In 2007, Vilks received death threats after drawing controversial pictures depicting the Prophet Muhammad as a dog. And he was infamously attacked by protesters when he was giving a lecture about free speech at Uppsala University in Sweden. And here in the studio is Nabila Ramdani, a French-Algerian journalist. Mr. Vilks, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Could you just tell us very briefly what your life has been like since 2007, since you drew that cartoon, and your constant protection?
Yeah, well, it was very messy in 2007 because I got on fatwa and a lot of threats and everything. But at that time I had no protection. So things seemed to calm down. So in 2010 I thought everything was over. But then there was the Irish security found that there was a kind of a plot against me with an American woman called Jihad Jane. They was planning to murder me. And quite after that I had this lecture at the Uppsala University when there was a riot in the room. And then my home was attacked by two Muslims who was trying to burn down my house, and they were also equipped with knives. And at the end of this year, the Stockholm suicide bomber, he addressed me in his attempt to create a massacre in Stockholm. And after that, and that was in the very beginning of 2011, I got protection around the clock, and so I've been living with that since then.
But let me ask you then tonight, and given what you did, do you in fact completely see yourself as allied with Charlie Hebdo? I mean, were you about satire or were you about offence?
Well, provocation and offence is a part of art. I mean, if you look at the history of art, that is the progress in art. You kind of attack the borders and limits and the prejudices that actually are existing. And for example, questioning a religious authority is a very common idea in art, and it should normally be no problem with that.
Well, let me pause you there for a moment, because in Paris itself there are, even now, tremendous scenes protesting in favour of freedom of speech. But I'm wondering, Nabila Ramdani, whether whilst you watch those scenes, whether you identify in any way with the statement from Mr. Vilks there that this is about the history of art, that the history of art has always been about both, at times, offence, and offence has often been part of the thread.
Well, I staunchly believe in freedom of speech and indeed freedom of expression, but I also believe that it comes with responsibility, and indeed it is framed within boundaries and the boundaries of the law. That's why in civilized societies we have libel laws, defamation laws, we have laws against discrimination and indeed against incitement to racial hatred. Let's be blunt about what's happened. This was clearly an evil massacre which was rightly condemned by, people across the world, including Muslim communities. And let's not forget that Muslims died alongside Christian and indeed atheists in the carnage. Would it be a good idea to mock their religion at their very funeral in the British press? I don't think that would be a particularly good idea. I would find it hugely offensive. Would that be a restricted view? It would be a decent view, which is protected by the rule of law and indeed by legislation in this country.
And one thing we know, Mr. Vilks, is that depicting any image of the Prophet, just an image, let alone what you did, is going to cause massive offence to millions of believing Muslims across the world.
Well, I mean, of course, people can have their belief, but when you have the secularity system in the Western society, and you have to also see that when a religion also comes into an ideology, it's about society and about how to treat human beings and how to evaluate things. So,
Let me ask Nabila to respond to that. Let me just hear your response to that.
It's nothing to do with secularism. I go back to the rule of law. There have been a backlash against Muslim communities already in France in the wake of the carnage. Attacks have been carried out against mosques. Is that a form of expression of art? Is that permissible in the limits that this gentleman outlines? I don't believe so. Let me quote something from, quote from the White House in September 2012, when Charlie Hebdo republished the cartoons. The White House deemed that the judgment of Charlie Hebdo was questionable, and publishing images that were deeply offensive and that were likely to be inflammatory, and that's exactly what happened. It inflamed the Arab and the Muslim world.
We must leave it there. Lars Vilks in Stockholm, Nabila Ramdani here. Thank you both very warmly.